first, I want to introduce the one and only Claire Hummel. I'm just going to say a couple of her amazing credits here. One is Half-Life Alyx, Myst, and Westworld VR, although that's three. But uh, welcome, Claire. Thank you so much for joining us. And we also have here Lynn Chen, the one and only.
Hi.
Not only has Lynn worked on games with Moon Active, Coin Master, Travel Town, mobile games, also worked in feature films, animation, Minions, Rise of Gru. And then we have here my dear friend, Maureen Fan, 10-time Emmy winner, CEO of Baobab, treasure trove of knowledge and all sorts of other amazing skills, info. I don't know. My name is Bobby Chiu, and I am here in a student mode. I'm here to learn from our wonderful guests and see, more of an insight of the world of games through the viewpoint of women.
Your perspective.
Yes, your perspective, exactly. I need perspective. I'm always looking for more perspective. Wonderful. So thank you guys for showing up and being with us here. For the
Yeah, thanks
people in
for
the
having
audience.
us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Maureen, do you want to ask a first question? Or you want me to?
Sure, I can start.
Sure.
It's just I would love to know why you guys got into games, and then for both for um, in particular, Lynn. I know that you've done both film and games. What makes you want to do one versus the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. For games, I think actually like growing up, I didn't think of myself working in games. I think after graduating college, like all my friends getting the game studio, it's just easier to, I don't know, I wouldn't say easier, but it's like seems like there's a lot more opportunities in like back in China working in games versus working in animation. Because back then, like, animation in China was not a very big thing. It was just rising, I think. So I had some like 3D environment experience working on games, but then when I came to the States, I feel like okay, I studied in animation, but I have the game background, so I can maybe try to look for opportunities in both directions. But games somehow just have more opportunities. Yeah, I have more luck with games, I would say. So I started there, but like I was really lucky to be able to work on like both animation and games. So I get a taste of a little bit of both worlds. So that's how it started, I think. Yeah. What about Claire?
Yeah. How about
Yeah,
you,
I
Claire?
was I was similar to Lynn. I didn't picture myself in games. My dad worked in animation when I was a kid, and so I
Oh,
always assumed that I would go into film and animation. But
mhm.
getting out of college, um, Microsoft just made a better offer than Disney feature, and so I was like, yeah, I'll try out games for a couple of years, and now more than a decade later, I've just kind of settled into it, and I don't know, I'm always open to what's on the other side and what it would be like working in animation because I have so many friends who work in it and it's such a fantastic field, but games just keeps pulling me back in. And there's something really
Yeah.
compelling about designing for that interactive space. Like it's a different set of challenges
Mhm.
than film and animation where it's really like baked down the final experience. So yeah, I just kind of tricked myself into really enjoying it. Um, and I guess technically I started in games when I was 15 because I had a summer job working at Neopets. So it was going to happen inevitably.
It's amazing.
Neopets. Wow, yeah. Haven't thought about that in a long time.
Yeah, 7 summers I
Goodness.
spent as an artist at Neopets.
Oh wow.
And so in the very beginning, has the landscape, have you seen the landscape change in terms of men, how many men versus how many women at a company?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's gotten so much better. And also just seeing the people who are like the students I'm talking to and the young artists I'm talking to who are getting into the industry. Like going to GDC the week before last, you can see that it's shifting for the better, where it's no longer a field entirely full of white men. Um, I think what you do run into is right now we're at that impasse where a lot of leadership roles are still are still senior people who've been in the industry for longer. And so it's taking a lot more conscious effort to get marginalized devs to sort of filter upwards. But you can see the things changing, and you see indie studios starting who are really prioritizing that. And I don't know, it feels so much better than it was 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel like I remember my first job working in a game studio. It's more of like an outsourced studio. It's not even like the core development studio, but I feel like most of the guys are working there. I mean, but that's back in China, but still, I think it's a similar situation. It's a lot more male. But right now, even I see a lot of leadership in the game studio are women too. So I think that's really empowering seeing that change. And yeah, I think right now I feel it's more because everyone is more aware of it. Like I think the opportunities are a lot more. It's a more in a like friendly environment in general to women compared to where it was before, like 10 years ago. So it's really nice to see that change in the industry.
I think there's a huge difference in amount of women in social casual games compared to AAA. At least, like a lot of the research shows that the types of games that women play,
Yeah.
like even now that's like 50% female, 50% male, that a lot of women are drawn towards the casual. So I'm curious how you feel the demographics of people actually working in the industry might be different across AAA games versus casual games.
I think, well, I can only speak from my experience because I only worked for social game companies. I think I would say that's true. Like in AAA games, I'm not so familiar, but I know some of my friends working in those game studios. But still, like compared to how many men working in a studio, it's still a huge difference. But I think like in casual games, there's tend to be a little bit more. I would say more women in a casual game, but it's just only from my experience. So, like even because before I worked at Fun Plus, it's a Chinese game company. Like our entire development team is run by women. So my leads and my art director, all girls. So I think that's the best experience. But also, of course, we have like engineer, which is more guys, mostly guys, but there are still like women engineer on that side too. So that's really cool to have that experience working on a project like that.
Yeah, I definitely think I agree that I think AAA is probably a little slower on the uptake. You still see the shift, but and I've worked with many amazing women throughout my career. But like at Valve, when I was at Valve, we were under 10% women, which is worse than the industry standard. So that was quite a bummer. But still, like I'm on the advisory board for GDC, and a couple of my mentees this year were women working in AAA games, and it's really exciting to see other people who are in that similar situation, who are coming up in their careers and making that progress. But yeah, there's something about the types of studios that attract women and the types of game that attract women, and the types of studios where women feel valued and safe and things like that. And AAA studios are getting better, but it is much more of a boys' club.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, yeah, maybe just like the types of the game, like it plays a role in there because like I play more casual game than AAA games, so I feel like it makes more sense for me to work on games that I like to play. So I would assume like a AAA games, not saying definitely, but like casual games do have like more, women players. So maybe that's a factor, but I don't know. Just throwing there.
I can say for my team, so I was at Zynga, and so
Yeah.
the Farmville franchise was my franchise. My team had the largest, highest percentage of female and minorities in the company. They do say farming, if you look at women and video games as a page, I'm just gonna paste it into the chat for you guys. This super cool chart at the bottom that actually says, it actually says these are the types of games women tend to like, and they actually do it by genre and what percentage of women players are women or whatever.
Oh, really?
It's super cool. But like number one is match 3 because of Candy Crush. Number 2 is family or farming simulator. Like that's me.
Yeah.
And that's 31% men, 69% women. But the team didn't become more female or minority. I had the highest concentration, and I think it had something to do with the fact that I was the GM at the time. But it wasn't even, I wasn't purposely trying to recruit women and minorities, to be totally honest. That back then I didn't even know like all the issues and whatnot. I think they just maybe felt more comfortable to apply to join, or maybe I just chose them subconsciously. I'm not sure, but I always thought that was interesting because it's not something that I was conscious of when it happened. Anyways,
That is very interesting because like,
yeah, the chart is fascinating.
Yeah.
well, also, just thinking about like things like MMO kind of games, it could be because of the culture amongst the users that deter women from wanting to play those games, right? Like I have heard toxic kind of stories and things like that.
Yeah.
You feel like that could play a role in this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like not even MMOs, but more feel like 6v6 or competitive games are things where you run into any games with a substantial amount of voice chat. It just immediately flags you for abuse when you sound like anything other than what people picture as the archetypical player of that game. And that's a level of friction where I'm like, oh, if I know I can play with a bunch of friends and I can get a team full of friends, then I'm great, I'm good to go. But the chance that I'm going to run into someone who's going to start spewing slurs is usually not worth the risk.
I think growing up, like MMO was big in China, and I remember going to those like internet bar. Definitely, when you see it's mostly guys, and they were smoking in there, swearing. It's so horrible. I don't want to be there. Like, yeah. So no, maybe that's just my personal experience keeping me from playing those games. It doesn't mean like the games are not great. Still want to play. But like it's just like psychologically, I feel like it connects to some of the like a smoky, like the layer of smoking in the room kind of environment to me. It's like no, no. But that's I know that's not true for everyone. That's not the case. But I still feel like I think maybe just the environment in general. It's harder for women to be part of it or treated, even just treat equally in games.
I had a bit of a follow-up. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go, Bobby, you go.
Well, I was going to say, it's that time of the year where people are finishing school soon and they're going to be going out there in the world and starting their careers, right? And I just want to see if you have any kind of advice, or especially things that challenges that maybe you went through that are still very apparent, and how to kind of look out for those things, how to navigate through those things and succeed. Does anything come to mind?
I feel, that's a really good question. I always wanted to help like young grads, students to get started. For me, I feel like right now the environment is very different from when I started, especially right now the industries are going through a pretty rough time. So I'm not sure how things are right now, but I would say, still like put your stuff out there, have a good online portfolio, like apply as many places as you can. That's always important. For me, when I started, I was applying for jobs, and also I think I got most of my opportunities. Most of my opportunities are coming from people finding me online, actually. So just posting things online, what work you've done, and also have them, as a portfolio when you apply jobs. Apply places, people could easily see, okay, what can you do? So that's always a very good start. And in terms of I don't know. I don't know if there's any other specific suggestions. Claire, do you have anything?
Yeah, I definitely
Just
agree
throwing
that
it
no,
by
so
you.
much of it is just like putting yourself out there, making yourself easily available, you and your
Yeah.
work. So I always recommend obviously being on socials, but also having a dedicated website that's updated and easy to send people to.
Mhm.
I think being aware of the studios you're applying to is really important. So even a lot of us as artists, we have so many different styles or things that we do and kind of have a Venn diagram of skill sets. And so I think that ability to kind of cater your portfolio to the studios you are applying to or the jobs you're applying to is really important. And I tell most students that there's no like one way to get in the industry. I've worked with so many people who started as interns or came up through QA or shifted fields entirely. So it's not like there's one golden path to get in there. And I just recommend that artists like don't just look at the front page of ArtStation and try to mimic what you think is going to get you jobs because there's always going to be artists who are better than all of us out there. And so if you can do anything that sets your portfolio apart, like what about your interests and your passions and your lived experience make your art yours, that is so much more interesting to me than being like, yep, it's another hyper realistic space marine on the front page of ArtStation that has
That is so
nothing
true.
new to say, Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's so true. I think that like we often get the question like, how do you make your art unique? How do you find your art style? That comes. It's the same thing, like because we all have different experience, we have our different interests. Like, what makes your art standing out than other portfolios online? It's definitely your personal interest and experience. For me, I have my dog. I love my dog. I draw my dog all the time. That's why it's
So
like
good.
become my thing. But like if you're into like machine guns, heavy metal, like machineries, that's like I try to do that. It comes out just that's not me, right? I can't do it. So I agree with Claire very much on that. So definitely try to stick to what you're interested are. Find your passion and show it through your personal work. But also when you have things in your portfolio starting out, definitely knowing what you wanted to do. For example, you want to do like environment design, definitely, portfolio will have more pieces of that. So showing that's your interest. So you don't get a random character design request because that might happen. And if you don't like it, you're stuck with the job because yeah, it's a job, have to do it. So I think everything builds up gradually. Maybe at first when you're starting out, we don't get the luxury to be very picky. Maybe this is the job I don't quite like, but if it pays my bill, I have student debt to pay, or well, let's be more realistic. And nowadays, we just like get your career started, and then slowly we keep catering. I mean, like choose and pick what projects you want to work on, what project you don't want to work on, and work towards the direction where you want it to go. I think that's always the case for when we start out.
I was wondering if you guys can talk because the types of games that you make are so different for you guys, for your teams, when you are looking for artists, like fresh grads or people you're hiring in, what types of positions you guys do look for? Because there's anything from like the cinematic artist to the in-game art, the environment, like all the different types of artist roles there could be, and then what you in particular for your teams tend to look for.
Yeah.
I can start. It was actually kind of a bummer being at Valve for so long where they don't really hire junior artists. It's like an entirely senior team. And so you don't get that joy of like bringing on people who have potential. But I love doing that. We brought on a junior artist at Campo Santo, Liz Chi, to help with concept art and stuff. And it was great where it was bringing someone on knowing that it was simultaneously a good learning experience for them. So giving them the room to grow and to be guided and molded a bit, but also being able to bring someone on to support the team where we have gaps in our hiring. And so at Campo, since I was the only concept artist and art director, it was so nice to have that added concept support and to kind of bounce ideas off of each other. But then sometimes you're on teams where you are fully fleshed out in concept and you'd primarily want to focus on bringing on people who can contribute to the actual like 3D pipeline of getting objects in games. So I think anything young artists can do to really prove that they have the skill set to be functional within the actual pipeline of making a game. So if you can make concepts and do turnarounds and call outs, you can model and texture, get an asset game ready and into engine is infinitely more valuable than just being like, I did a beautiful sculpt in ZBrush that I can't do anything with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think that's the thing is like knowing what you want to do and showing your ability to be able to do it, right? So for the company, for Moon Active, where I'm working at right now, the team structure is a little bit different because we have like a pipeline that's more like an animation pipeline, so it's more efficient. So it's not like looking for a concept art per se, but then we're more looking for like, let's say we have layout artists, we have color key artists, we have rendering artists. So each section of the pipeline has very specific skill sets we're looking for. But like, it's very important to show that you understand the fundamentals, right? So let's say if you are in a layout team or drawing characters, you have to show like a really strong skill set of understanding how anatomy works and the perspective and showing your drawing skills. Versus in my department, color key, I will be looking for a lot more like fundamentals of understanding of the fundamentals of lighting, how light bounces off object. Are you able to paint the effects? For example, we have strong key light. Where is your key light? Does your image have a clear light source and then fill light and bounce light? How does those lighting works on the object surface, and what's the mood? Things like that. And then rendering department will be like, how do you make things look polished, right? There's certain ways to work smart, not have to like spend hours or days on the tiny little corner of the painting, but how do you paint efficiently to convey this material and like how you look, if it's aged, if it's brand new, does it look like a vector super sharp, but or is it looks more painterly and nice. So we're more looking things more like that, on a different, it depends on what you want to do. But I think in portfolio, you still wanted to show a little bit of everything if you want to, I don't know, not necessarily everything, but showing what you wanted to do. Let's say if you want to do color key, you'll be like have a lot of like a color paintings that'll be really helpful to see the skill set that you have. Yeah.
Well, there's also a couple questions from the audience. I want to go to, hopefully I pronounce this right, Radhika says, can you get a job in animation without a college degree or games? Let's say games as well, since this is about games. Is it very important? Also, can you suggest where I can do internships if there's anything specific that any of you know?
Get a job in animation or games without a college degree. I would say yes, definitely. Well, also depends on where you are. I know like in China, they do look at your college degree and all that. I don't know how much they factor into it when they're considering if they're hiring you or not. But my experience in the States or any other, I don't know, just in general, I feel they mostly look at your portfolio, not so much about degree. If you haven't got a degree, but you show very strong skill sets, you can do the job much better than anyone else who has a college degree. Even grad degree. If you're better than them, if your skill set is better than them, you're going to get a job. I think that's straightforward. But that's my experience. What was the other question?
If you knew any specific internships that, you could recommend.
Yeah, right now I feel like I don't know exactly where we can get internship, but like for bigger studios, they always put information online on their career site. You can always check and apply for it. But I feel like I don't have a whole lot of tips on that because that at least that's what I would do. Just go on their career site and look if they're hiring. Also go to conventions and stuff and talk to their recruiter and you will know more.
Yeah, those in-person experiences I think are pretty invaluable for making an impact on recruiters and studios. Someone
What's
mentioned
a good event? Maybe you could recommend a good event.
light something. Lightbox.
Light something. Lightbox.
I have not been paid to say this. Lightbox is amazing. Go to Lightbox. Someone was saying like so many jobs request game credits or are only internships. I think for ones that request game credits, sometimes I'm like, you should still apply. Often that is just a way where they're trying to cut off people who don't have any experience or don't have an idea of what the job entails. But if you're jumping industries, there's a chance that having worked on film or animation will still count towards those credits. And I totally agree with Lynn, where it's like technically sometimes degrees come into play when you're dealing with visas and international work. Yeah. But otherwise, when we're looking at portfolios, I just scan past the degree. It means nothing to me. I'm just looking at the portfolio. I think I say this as someone who got a degree in illustration and I value it so much. And I'm so glad I got it because of what I got out of the degree that I probably wouldn't have got just as a self-trained artist. But it's so expensive to go to school. And so I always tell students like, one, are you sure that you can take on the financial burden? And you have to get out of school what you put into it. So if you get what you need after 1 year of classes, then that's great. If you just need to go to schoolism and just watch other like online tutorials and self-teach yourself, that is totally valid. Yeah, it's like you should get a degree because you think you will get something out of it as an artist, not because you arbitrarily need a piece of paper to get a job.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Maureen, do you take interns at your studio?
We do, but for our interns, you have to be able to get college credit for it. But we have had, we actually have had a lot of interns from Art Center and also from San Jose. I love San Jose State. They work them really hard. Really good. Not like entitled. Draw. Love it. So yeah. But we do.
Good to know.
We're always looking, but for us, it's always anything from like graphic design interns, which is a very different skill set from sometimes. And then we've had actually one of our interns actually became one of our production artists too.
Oh, nice.
So we have marketing artists, which is mostly social media artists to keep the pipe running. We have graphic design, which is also oftentimes something related to marketing. And then we have production internships to actually contribute characters, designs. One of them, Christine, she was from our center. She did our color scripts actually for Crow because she was so amazing. So yeah.
Heck yeah.
That's cool.
Well, then I gotta ask a little follow-up real quick. What are some great advice to get past, that initial bunch of portfolios and, for you to really pick up on it and go, yeah, I want to interview this person. I want to hire this person for co-op or whatever.
For me, it's kind of related to
Is there anything like for me?
I was just gonna say it's
Oh,
related
go
to
ahead.
what
Go ahead. I'm just filling in space.
yeah, it's related to what I was talking about earlier, where that really just having a personal identity that comes through in your portfolio. And I know that's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to find. Like it's less about style, but more about substance. I had an artist come to my table at like CTN years ago, back when I went to it, where she was showing me her portfolio and she had a bunch of really hyper specific cultural references in her portfolio. And I was like, this is great. I haven't seen this before. Lean into this. And she came back a couple years later and she was like, that's what got me jobs. Now I'm an art director. She was so grateful for that advice. I think it's so tempting to water down your own vision to appeal to
Mhm.
studios, or just be like, I'm going to draw characters that look like Overwatch. I'm going to draw environments that look like Baldur's Gate. It's just like just kind of rehashing what's already been done. So anything you can bring in fresh references from your life, from art, from nature, just anything that just gives you something to say. Like it is so abundantly clear. Even when someone's technical skills aren't up to snuff, if they have that vision, I'm like, ooh, that's who I want to hire.
Yeah, it's like I think that's so true because you want to see from their portfolio they have passion for what they're doing, right? So that really shows that if you're just trying to do the work and just like, okay, that I want to apply for this job, so I have this type of work, but not necessarily your best, efforts or not best what you do. So it's less likely to be standing out as much. So showing your passion, showing what you love, that's very important. But also I still feel like knowing the job you're applying into, that still plays a very important role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I first started, I was drawing a lot of people, right? Because I was into drawing people as well. And then I found my little niche drawing creatures, and everybody gravitated towards that. And then later on, it's like, oh, you could draw people as well. I wonder, like, with being in the industry for, a good amount of time, finding your lane and everything, is there anything from, you know, any one of you where it's like, I can also do this. It's just people never ask me. Do you
That's
have one of those?
Yeah, that's actually super interesting because I always get like a freelance requests say, hey, can you do characters, design characters? But actually, like a lot of my work, it's actually just painting environments, just color key stuff. So I think as an artist, definitely you're able to cover a lot of ground, I would say, especially when you're starting your career. Let's say if you're starting your career in a smaller studio, maybe just a small game studio or even small animation studio, depends on your position. Sometimes you're gonna get to do a lot of different things, maybe not necessarily just drawing a character, but you have to design a vehicle. So I think it's important for us to be able to do that. Let's say, okay, this project needs this, so I'm not good at it, but I'm still able to do it if needed. So I think that's being flexible. It's also very important.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in games where I think there's so much back and forth with the teams where you're talking directly with modelers and animators, and things get bounced back and forth. That flexibility is just so important. That ability to take on new challenges or grow as an artist. Like there's so many things I probably, when I joined Microsoft, I was like, I'm a character artist. That's all I do. And that has completely changed over the years where I'm doing prop and environment stuff. I do 3D, all sorts of things. And I'm so grateful I do, because it also gives you that flexibility, as you said, to like make yourself useful at different points during development. Like at a certain point, they just don't need any more concept art, and it's nice to be able to shift over and help with getting actual 3D objects into the game.
Right.
Mm.
I, I have a question for you guys. I've been inundated recently by film people, and I'm an advisor for this company called The Believer Company, which is run by a bunch of ex-League original people. And I have all these animation people because animation industry is in the crap in the gutters right now. Just games is too, but Hollywood's like,
all the
oh,
industries
so
are bad
hard.
right now.
sexy. And games are so
Yeah.
sexy. I'm like, no, games going through a really bad time right now.
Games,
But anyway,
games
they're
the
all
same,
like,
Worst
yeah.
layoffs.
it's
Yeah.
so bad. But they're like, oh, but there's these startups and games are like, oh, that these startups say that they care about narrative. So they're thinking, oh, my skill set will just translate. And I'm like, no, it's not exactly the same. Can you guys talk about the differences, or what from Claire, you see people applying from there and your friends from there in terms of like their mindset of how they do art or design, and this mental switch necessary. And then from you off, so Lynn, because you actually work in both, like the mental switch of going from one industry to another.
Yeah, I feel like they're absolutely related. There's an overlap. There's a Venn diagram between, let's say, animation and games. But there are very different priorities you have to account for in games. So in designing, especially characters, where suddenly you have to account for characters that are being controlled by a third party, by the player, you are seeing from a particular angle. Whereas like, oh, if you're playing an Assassin's Creed game and you're primarily seeing that character from behind, it's like, oh, you got to make the back of that character super dynamic and interesting in a way that you would not normally prioritize when you're making just a flat baked down narrative piece. Um, and that idea of like, yeah, suddenly you have branching narrative, you have players who are who are the main character, I think is very different from watching something on a screen. There are all of these little technical things that you kind of have to wrap your head around, where it's a lot harder to just make something and just be like, that's it, that's the final. You have to count for so many things further down the pipe. You have to count for rigging and animation and game mechanics. Like in the grand scheme of things, game mechanics, I would argue, are the most important thing. As much as we want to be like aesthetics and story are most important, you still want to make sure it is a compelling game to play. And I've had so many good designs that I'm very proud of that were just terrible fits for the actual function they needed to serve in the game.
Yeah, that's so true. I wasn't even thinking about that, but I can't agree more. I think for example, from my experience working in animation, it depends on if it's early development or like later on in like production work. Early in development, there's very little constraints because often in time we wanted to explore as much as we can, what the world looks like. It's just a beautiful painting, maybe throw some unique ideas in there, that's great. But like when it comes to production, like in animation, for example, for characters, there's more like technical issues, like what kind of body proportion you have to follow, and like a rigging and animation, that's a whole different thing. I think that's very similar in games, but the differences would be like how the art adapt in the game. Like it depends on the engineer, what kind of technique they're using. For example, like if we just do a beautiful painting for early concepting animation, one painting is enough. But we're doing backgrounds for games, like that'll be different. For example, in casual games, so sometimes you play the game and then the environment is starting to adding things, more and more things in the scene where you like get more money, buy more stuff, and stuff getting added on top. So not only you're gonna thinking about what the background looks like, you have to like paint things individually on different layers. So that becomes more technical. But I think everything shares the same fundamental. For example, you're painting the environment, you still want to have a good understanding of perspective, lighting, color theories, all of that. It's the same, but it's just like how it works in the pipeline, like a little bit of like how to structure files, how to group your files, and all that. That's not probably it's different. And also my work right now, it doesn't require any 3D, but when I was working at Warner Brothers and for production work, understanding 3D, like Blender or Maya, is really great because if you're doing backgrounds, sometimes you have to get the scene rendered out, masking out, and then do the color and do that. So it depends on the project, I would say.
I really think the whole fact that you're working in a real-time game engine also is like very different way of thinking, because you have like hours and hours of rendering time to make your image. Like, so especially if you're working on something, a game for your phone, right? The limitation, like designing a style, that because number one is performance. If it is just like half a second slow, playing the game is gonna quit your game because it was too slow. So coming up with an art style that actually fits within the render budget is so important. But also, this is going to sound really soul-sucking, but I remember for Farb 2, the animators wanted to do like, oh, I'm going to develop this character, right, and do this character animation walking into the thing. And then the product manager's game designer is like, okay, that's nice, but that extra however many seconds of them walking in to show whatever as opportunity for the user to leave. And they don't want to see that. They just want to plant, plow, harvest, and they want to get to the core loop of the game. So yes, it helps with character development, but the number one thing you serve is the gameplay. And so it's helping with the gameplay, if not. So it's a little, it was, I'm sure, very frustrating for the animators. Like, what do you mean cut? But it's funny because for Final Fantasy growing up, my favorite part was to watch the cutscenes. I actually played just to get to the cutscene to see the story.
Absolutely.
But half my friends are just like, as soon as it came on, they would do the trick. They open the console, shut it to skip, because that was the trick to skip. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to watch that. I just want to fight more people, right? So it's interesting.
Wow.
And majority of my friends were more like that. It was actually fun.
As artists, probably appreciate the pretty scene, but for most of the players, it's like, and it's really interesting. It's like, because sometimes when we spend our time like painting a pretty image and it's published and it's online, and you see all the user response, it's like, how can I add friends? How can I do this? And it's completely not related to whatever your art
every time
that you put the efforts in there. But that's a gameplay. I think in the end, it is about the gameplay. You're so that's so true. I was gonna say something and I forgot.
Lynn.
I was my friend. I see some other questions coming from the chat though.
Right. Would a graphic design and vector animator degree help you get a work visa to work in games? I want to work on character design, but can't afford a degree directly directed to character design.
Vector animator, graphic, but why not get a work visa to work in graphic design?
Right, that's something that all the customs people, they understand. They don't understand animator. You go there and you go, I'm going to go and animate, in your country. They'll be like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? But if you say graphic design, they're like, oh, okay, you got the forms. Okay, check all the boxes. There you go.
Right. It's true.
That's my impression anyways.
I feel that too.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people working in like processing the visas, games, like, is that a real job? I don't know. That's a different thing. They don't really understand,
It's like no, people do have to make it.
Yeah, my parents don't even know what I do. It's just like, you're just sitting in your room. You don't even go to work and you get paid.
Anyway, you're just goofing off all day, Lynn. Come on.
That's a different thing. But graphic design and vector working animator to help you get visa in games. I don't know if they'll help you to get the work visa to work in games. It depends what kind of position you're applying for the game in a game studio, right? Let's say if you want to become a UI artist, or that's more of a graphic design thing. Vector animator, I think it just depends on the company you're looking for. There's definitely opportunities, but I would say to get a work visa, you have to have the company to be willing to sponsor you. Not all game company willing to do, especially right now when the economy is not good. Probably a lot of smaller studio doesn't want to spend extra money to sponsor that. But if you're going for a bigger studio, knowing what position you're looking for, and when you enter in the interview and the negotiation, that's something you need to talk with the HR recruiters about. So I would say everything is possible, but you have to work really hard to get that position, because in order to have someone hire you and willing to sponsor you, well, they could spend less money and hire someone local. They don't have to go through the visa and all that. But if you're so much better than the other candidates, yes, you definitely get yourself the chance for that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Degrees help. They're
Yes,
not
in
absolutely
that case.
necessary.
Yeah.
You know, we've been getting just more and more requests for like, can you write a letter and say, like, I did a presentation at Lightbox and stuff like that, for specifically for visas. So I think like any kind of speaking engagement kind of stuff also can help your chances, it seems.
Right. So yeah, I think that's very true. So like a graphic design animation degree, it will definitely help in the visa progress. And also, if you want to work on character design, but that's what you really wanted to work for in games, like, yeah, you cannot afford the degree, but there's a lot of resource online right now. Like Schoolism has a lot of really good class for character design. You know, like when I was asked for doing character design, I was like, I've never done character design work professionally. I didn't go to school to learn character design. I learned illustration, which is totally different, like editorial illustration, book illustration, but not character design. That's something we learn from other platform, right? So check out the really good classes on Schoolism. I think that helps me a lot for my career. Not necessarily.
Thank you, Lynn. I'll pay you later for that wonderful comment.
Yes,
I think
please.
each name drop we get $5, so we gotta keep.
But
Yes, I owe Claire about $10 too. So I would love to. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, yeah, that even for us, like I went to animation college, and then I learned illustration in grad school, but still I don't feel like I have all the skill set I needed for doing my job right now. So that's something we look online for other resource. That's very important.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a little exercise. Say you do not have the skills that you have anymore, and you live out of country, and but you know the stuff that you know currently, you just don't have the skills or whatever. You're back to student skill levels. What would be the game plan? You know, essentially it's like for somebody starting and that are not American, what would be your kind of like master plan to try to craft yourself a really great career in games?
Oh my God. For me, there's no better way. All I know is just hard work get me where I am right now. So if I knew that when I was in college, oh my God, right now it would be so much better. But I guess
feel
the
like
game
Maureen
plan
will
will be
say, I feel like Maureen, you would say something like, find somebody to mentor you, target somebody that you want to be your mentor. But I don't know.
That's not what I did when I was in college. I totally did not think that way. It wasn't until I was
But
working that I
if
having
we
the
knew
knowledge that you
that,
have now,
yeah, going
having the
back,
knowledge that you
that'll
have
be the best
now,
way.
You know what I
how
would
would you
do back
strategize?
then? I would have made best friends with all the professors. That's what I would have done because
Better degree. Better.
I would, because okay, so even for me right now, because I'm lazy, and so I just go to all the art schools I just mentioned, like San Jose State, and then I find the professor that does like character design, whatever, and I send them an email like, "Yo, can you recommend some people for me?" And then they send me a say, and that's what I do. That's like the easiest way. But if that's what I would find people, and even if you weren't in school, I would somehow become friends with the professors or the whatever, and then get them to recommend you all the time. Because see with Eric, so Eric Darnell's my co-founder. He wrote and directed all the Madagascar films and ants. So he has relationships with these professors because when he was at DreamWorks, they all like want to talk to him and whatnot. So he has direct relationships with them, and he does the same exact thing. Or he'll look at someone's portfolio and then just like ask the teacher, yo, what do you really think of this student or whatnot? And I think they have all the relationships with all the studios, all the whatever. They can get you anywhere if they like you. So even like even if you're taking like one class, and it's not so if you're doing schoolism, right? You become best friends with that schoolism teacher, right? As best you can. And then hope that they'll recommend you to stuff. Or Academy of Art, for example, here in SF, a lot of guest teachers, right, teach there. And it doesn't have to be a degree, just taking one class and network the shit out of that class and network the shit out of professors. That's what I would be doing. Yeah.
And I mean, even more generally, that idea of just like having people in your court, like having people who want to back you up and recommend you for things is just such a powerful thing to have. I think people think of networking as being like, just talk to as many people as you can and just hand out business cards and just talk to the most talented people in your industry. And so much of networking is actually getting to know people at your level or getting to know people very naturally, where you just become friends and peers. And then just inevitably down the line, when I'm thinking about wanting to hire someone, where it's like, oh, I want a producer. Who are some amazing producers I've worked with? Can I work with them again, or can they recommend people to me? And anything you can do to get people to like understand what you bring to the table and recommend you as an artist and as a person to work with, where it's like you get stuff done, you hit deadlines, you're trustworthy. It's so valuable because it's great to just be in the back of someone's brain at all times to be like, oh, someone wants this. I have a couple artists where I'm like, oh, if people reach out to me for freelance because they want like historical fashion stuff, I have like 3 or 4 artists where I immediately recommend if I don't have the time to do it, because I'm like, I know they can do it. They need this experience and they will knock it out of the park. And so, yeah, just like being on the tip of someone's tongue is so valuable.
But, speaking of recommendations, I remember taking somebody last year for Lightbox Expo, and I didn't even look into the person. They were recommended by Maureen. And then I texted Maureen. I was like, this person reached out. Do you vouch for this person? And she was like, yeah. And then that was it.
That's enough.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then she felt lots of pressure to make sure that she didn't fuck it up.
And she did great. She
was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
That worked out. That's great.
Yeah. Well, did you want to go to do you want to ask another question, Maureen, or should I?
Yeah, I want to ask a super controversial one. This is so fun.
Oh boy.
Bring it on.
Hey, are your companies using AI? If you're allowed to say it, are you? And how do you feel? Or you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm just curious because a lot of people are worried that it's the more junior entry level type people that are going to be, threatened by AI if there is. So I'm curious what your view is, or is your company doing it? Do you have any policies, anything like that? And feel free not to answer.
I'm thinking, and then I could answer that. I think just from what I see, like from outside of artist perspective, like if you're running a company, if you know nothing about art, if you're just on the business side of things, marketing side of things, they want to see things get done. We want to see things get be more efficient, right? And AI seems like the right answer to go for. The company started to push AI for sure. And I know a lot of Chinese companies, they're just like AI. Like if you know AI, you're in. So there's a lot of opportunities there. I don't know if it's just a hype or it's gonna be here to stay. Probably the latter. It's gonna stay here. It's gonna change the industry for sure. But in my studio right now, it's just there's part of the team that's pushing for using AI more, but AI is just not there. And not to mention the moral issues of how this AI is used. Even when we train AI model within the company's existing work, the outcome is just, no, it's not there. Like it cannot be used for like production exactly. Even just do a simple icon. We can, like, at least right now, we don't see the fit. I don't think it's not gonna work. It's just not there. I don't
Do
know.
you guys
Like
use it for reference? Do you
I
guys use it
do.
for creating reference?
I do right now. I do use it for reference. So, for example, like right now, like for example, I'm looking at things like a sunset. I want to see something in the vineyard, and then the sunlight, warm sunlight, shine through the glasses of red wine. I just want to find like lighting reference for that. Somehow, when I go on Google and search, it just nothing is like exactly the shot I want, but using eyes like vineyard, let's several lighting, it does come out. So I was telling my teams that, sometimes there will be AI generated art reference just to show what I mean. So So in that sense, I do use AI for that, but not too often. It just depends. But for production wise, no. It's that no, just no. Or I can say not yet. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. There's always, chances because AI is going to change the industry for sure.
Oh yeah. I do always find it confusing where now we have to like clarify between generative AI and just like AI as an actual tool set that has existed for decades in games in terms of like getting characters to do things.
Like a
I'm
state
like,
machine.
yeah, where it's like, oh
Yeah, yeah.
no, when we say AI, like some people are talking about their NPC AI, and people are like, I can't believe the studio's using AI. I was like, no, this is a different thing. Generative AI. Um, I I'm definitely in the position where I'm less concerned about artists using generative AI as a tool. And obviously I want a version of it to exist where people could like opt into the machine that's just churning through all of our personal websites and sampling our art. Um, but I'm more concerned by that idea of corporations using it just as a full replacement for artists because I have several coworkers like back at Valve who in the early days of Midjourney and stuff were using it as a tool to kind of pull reference and idea generate. And when you have like world-class artists using it as one tool in their toolbox that they're painting on top of and stuff, I'm like, oh, I can see how this could fit into someone's creative process without kneecapping them in the same way that I'm like, oh, there are artists who know how to use photo bashing and there are artists who are hindered by photo bashing. So yeah, it's one of those things where I am not personally interested in consuming AI generated art as a whole. Like when people use it for posters and stuff, that bums me out so much because you're
Yeah.
just literally saying, we didn't want to pay an artist to do this. Um, and I'm glad that I seem to work with people who also care pretty deeply about being like, oh, at the end of the day, we want the final product to be something that humans are putting out there and has that intentionality there. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see where it lands. I think corporations are going to rapidly run up against the wall of the multiple walls of being like, oh, it clearly has a ton of copyright infringement built into it right now, where it's like, oh, you can generate Dune screenshots pretty easily. You can't copyright AI images, so I think that's also going to hurt corporations. And also, eventually, it's just going to like flood with so much imagery to the point that I think it starts to lose its value pretty quickly. But yeah, I have no idea. It's changed so much in a year, in 2 years. So who knows where it's going to be in the future.
Yeah, not sure. I think as a entry level artist, I think it's important to have all the tool sets for you to do whatever the job needs. right? Even means, let's say the company just suddenly say, okay, we're only do AI now, which would suck. I think it depends. I would say it depends. If it's fully just like AI generating art, you're just touching up all the art, I'll be like, get out there. You don't want to be there.
Mhm.
But if it's something, let's say the project needs some AI generated ideas, if you're putting pitch and pitch deck or anything, if it does help you to make things more efficient, I think it's not a bad idea to know the tool and use it as a tool. But I'd say if you're using AI, just claim it. This is done by AI. Don't try to say, okay, I generate an image, that's AI, but I put it on my portfolio side. It's my portfolio. That's definitely not okay. I think things are changing rapidly. For sure, it's good to know what's going on and stay informed and know know your tools. Basically, I would say play around Midjourney and Stable Diffusion and see what's that about. And if you find any ways you could pull reference from, or just find creative ways to use it as reference or anything, you should definitely do that. But if you're still have passion in arts, definitely work on your fundamentals and still, just try to paint and try to draw and get that'll get where you need it to be as well. Yeah, that's
So
just
with generative AI, I kind of, what I think of? I think of like blacksmiths. Like before, you wanted something in metal, you got to go to a blacksmith, right? And that person would bang out some stuff and make you a fork. But some things you don't really care to get done by a blacksmith, like a fork. You just want to buy that fork and it's made by machines and you don't really care. But if it's a nice, beautiful statue, things like that, then you probably want an actual human to actually do that. I just wonder what is a fork, of animation? Like what is a job that is pretty much making forks, and what are the jobs that are going to really stick around the way that they are? But it also seems like, that AI doesn't seem like, and I'm not pro anything, by the way. I don't have an opinion because I don't have enough info to really construct a very solid opinion about a very, very, very complex subject, right? But it does feel like artists will still stick around. All these jobs will still stick around, but they may require a lot of people to use AI as part of their job. I don't know how I feel about that either, but that's just how I think it's going to kind of pan out.
I agree. I'm still not sure how I feel about that, but I see the changes there. I think that's their direction. That's why I feel like it's probably good to know the tool just in case you need it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to be aware of it.
Yeah. I just don't want to give money to those, those companies in any way or shape or form to help them. Yeah. But hey, I don't judge. So, well, something else that kind of I have been thinking about and talking with people about is the idea of the most growth has always come through failures, through challenges that I've had in the past. What was a project or a time in your life where you felt the most growth? If that makes sense. And was it because of a, specific challenge or something like that?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
remember the name of it.
I feel okay, just speaking from my own experience, for freelance, I've been doing a lot of character design. Honestly, like I just mentioned earlier, I didn't came out from like a visual development degree or anything. So my school teaches like editorial illustration, bookmaking, or whatever, making like pop out cards, like crafting. I was like, why am I doing this? But so when I got like character design work, for me it's like, okay, I feel like I'm missing a lot of like knowledge of what's expected. So basically, I'm just like, yeah, I can do the work. And then when I started, I feel like there's a lot of times I'm just missing the target because I don't know if it's the way I delivered, it wasn't right, or just my sketch was not like having the right, like, let's say, proportion or personality. I don't know. So I feel I just get a lot of, like, after working a while, there was like, okay, thank you for your help, and we have a change in the direction of the project. Your work is amazing, but let's. So basically, that's it. So over years, I was like, okay, there's a change of the direction of the project. Basically, that's the term they're saying, okay, let's move on. Bye bye. maybe next time. So for me, I take it very personally. I feel like I'm not doing good enough because, like, when this happens a lot, change of direction happens too much. For me, it's like, okay, there's something wrong. I'm not sure what I'm doing here right. So I think for me, it took me a while to know, okay, like knowing better, doing character design, what's expected, like we're really trying to like finding the connection between you and the character, and like knowing what the personality is and how do we convey that, what's the type of the body shape and all that, the body types and everything. So later on, I think I have a better understanding. For that time, I think it was really hard for me, but like that forced me to say, okay, I felt so many times, but like, okay, the next time the opportunity comes, how can I do better? That's what I learned the most. For when I was working on Minions, the Rise of Gru, it was really hard for me because, like, again, not knowing a lot of what's expected, and also, Minions has a really strong kind of like art style already. I think for me, it was really hard to fit in that style, to make the characters look super exaggerated or sometimes really linky, right? For me, it's like asking a lot of questions, looking for reference, and I think just communicating a lot more to that helps me a lot to just say, okay, this is to figure out the direction. Also trying drawing a lot, so it's more directly visually communicating. Say, okay, this is what we wanted. This is what we don't want it. So I think that helped me to get through those low moments of having to make like change your direction project. I don't know. It's just me.
Wonderful. Well, Claire, any disadvantages, any challenges where it, looking in hindsight, it was actually really great for you? And
Oh yeah, I think having any career for a long period of time, you're going to experience those growing pains where you get like real confident in your own abilities and you're feeling like you own the world, and then suddenly you don't. And that's just because you are aware of where your limitations are and you can be better. And I have a couple times where it's like I can't. This was what I was trying to think of earlier. I can't even remember what the game was or what the final name for the game was, but it was this tiny little task I had when I was at Microsoft, where my art director at the time, Louise Smith, who I butted heads with a bunch, and then she ended up being like the best art director I had ever had at the time because she pushed me. I was just doing some little character portraits, and I was just like completely blind to my own stylistic influences. Like I just could not see that the way I was rendering the characters was drawing from like this deep set like DNA, this Disney DNA that was still in me earlier on in my career. And I just couldn't see it. I was so blind to it. And she sternly but gently just kept getting me to redo this task and redo this task. And I was so frustrated with it. And I didn't understand because the paintings I was doing were fine. They were polished, they were great, but I just couldn't see my own limitation. And I remember the exact piece where I just like had a breakthrough and it cracked my brain open. Like it fully changed the way I was thinking about painting characters on a 2D plane. And it's so weird to be able to point to a specific painting, be like, that's the one, that's where it like broke something in a good way and kind of let me grow as an artist. And I remember at the time being so frustrated and feeling this is these jobs working in these industries. It's problem solving. That's what concept art is. And so it's really frustrating when you can't solve the problem, when it feels like you can't put together the puzzle. And so it was really frustrating. But afterwards, it was so apparent that Louise like saw my potential and saw that I could get it to where it needed to go. And so I've had a couple times like that in the industry, even when I was art directing at Campo Santo and on In the Valley of Gods, and the heads of the studio took me out for lunch one day, and they were like, they could see that I was getting my own head about things and that I was holding myself back. And those kinds of conversations are so important, like having coworkers who you can have those really frank conversations with, people who love you and trust you and want you to do good work, and that you can take that feedback and internalize it and turn it around. It keeps happening. I feel like there's no point in your career where you're just like, I've figured it out. I'm the best artist I can be. I'm done. Yeah, it's scary, but it's worth it.
Would you say
Right.
like every time when we're in those low moments, so we can think of it, okay, this is the opportunity for us to get a breakthrough. So
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah, it's a
positive,
good way to put it.
positive
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
Marina, I'd also love to ask you this question. Any disadvantages or any challenges that you've had in the past that, looking in hindsight, you're like, wow, that was actually the best thing that could have happened to me because this happened, I learned this, or I improved in this.
I think I mentioned this during our one-on-one interview once. It was I wasn't this isn't I'm not an artist. I wish I could be as talented as you, because I'm the business person who makes sure there's money to have the artists in the company. But I was frustrated. It was in Farmville because I wasn't getting promoted to, at the time, general manager. I was like executive producer, and I'm like, I'm better than all these other people. I kept getting promoted. I was super pissed off. And then at one point, so anyways, I launched the game. It was Farmville 2 at that time. And then my boss told me to write down all the things I still wanted more money to do. And I wrote down, okay, I need X more artists or whatever. No, first I protested. I'm like, why should I ask for more? I just launched a successful game. I should be thankful and just be happy. Why should I ask for more? He's like, just do it. So I wrote this email like, I want this, this, and with that I can do blah, blah, blah. And the CEO at the time, Mark Pincus, was like, he just found like, okay. And I was like, what? You give me whatever it is I wanted. And then he explained, he's like, the fact that you dared to ask showed that you're not happy with great success. The game was a huge success. You feel you could do even better. And you're aggressively trying to do even better. And that makes you seem like such a badass. And that is exactly what happened. So I was too deferential or grateful. I should have been more entitled. I learned to be more entitled. No, but that's when I started having the motto of always be asking. What I didn't realize is the more aggressive, it's obnoxious. I wouldn't say this to millennials. Do not take that as what you say. Sorry. Or Gen Z or Gen Alpha, but by us being super aggressive upwards, like bosses and bosses boss, actually made them feel that I was more of a leader and that I was confident and wasn't scared. And then they're like, why isn't she scared to ask me for this? Why is she so confident? There must be something amazing about her. And it makes them all confused because they're not
tricked them more.
And then they're like, yeah. And then they give me more. Everything I ask for, they keep on giving it to me. And then this is a positive reinforcement loop where I become a monster now. I just ask for everything. But I'm just saying it really worked. And yeah, the worst thing they could say is no. I mean, you don't want to ask for things that are that make you seem totally entitled, but a little bit entitled is okay.
Well, I think the key formula, the key ingredient there was that you shipped a successful game. If you just straight out just asked a whole bunch of crap without shipping a successful game,
right,
the whole thing might be different.
Well, not exactly, because the statistic does say that women are judged more on their past accomplishments and achievements, and men are judged more on their future potential. So because of that, so yes, absolutely, as a woman, I need to make sure to do that. But like when I was fundraising for my company, I made sure that I included all my past accomplishments because I knew what I was up against in terms of like women in general get funded. They don't get funded, especially in games, by the way. I sent Bobby a stat, like in 2021 or whatever, it's like 5 women together raised like 1 point something million versus there were like 238 men who raised over like however many billions of dollars to start.
Oh yeah, that was a rough number.
Yeah.
Depressing.
But
go ahead, Lynn.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't
Go
want
ahead.
like because like you have the courage to ask, but do you feel you have to ask in order to get what you want because you're women versus like some other men, maybe they don't have to ask very hard and they will just get what they needed? You think, do you have to like
I haven't seen that as I feel that they ask, whereas women don't tend to ask. It's not situation like when it's came down to raise time, giving a promotion.
Yeah,
I can tell you. So my studio is it was like 180 or something people. I had several different studios that I was overseeing, and each of them were different game studios.
Right.
The ones who would always ask me were dudes. Are constantly asking me for this, that.
Okay.
Girls didn't know that, right? Girls didn't know that the guys were asking all the time.
Yeah.
And the girls are just like, oh, I don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation with my boss, or if I deserved it, I would get, or whatever the reason. So to actually tell the woman, which is in a way working against me because I only have a certain amount of money to give each quarter. Like the company would give me like X%. So I could either peanut butter that across everybody, right? Or I can choose people. And the right thing is to choose your winners. But who I remember in my head, that annoying person kept on asking me, right? So like, that's why I think always be asking, because you think that you don't realize that the other people are asking. So if you're not asking, then you're putting yourself automatically at a disadvantage.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Agreed.
Same thing with Lightbox, by the way. Like, who wants to do talks? I get all sorts of requests, generally from a lot more male than female. A lot more.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so I generally, you guys know, I will email you guys and go, hey, you want to be a part of this? You want to do this? You want to do this? Because, I want to make sure it's the proper representation at the event.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Because like if like sometimes I know they send out the forms like, hey, who has any topic? I say, I want to do that, but I never get to do that. I feel like it's just like, maybe a little shy or something. So I'm really grateful that you asked. It's always fun to do some talks and do demos and all that. So yeah, interesting.
That is important, as it also makes me annoyed that if women, now this is generalization, it's not all women, right? Like obviously I'm not like that anymore. I'm a monster now. I used to be, they told me that I was
You're
too
an entitled
deferential
monster.
and sweet, submissive, docile woman. That's who I used to be. Anyway, so, but knowing that there are people like that, it's kind of annoying for me it's not advice like, oh, you should all make your motto always be asking. You should be you, right? And the crappy thing is the world, at least Western society, tends to incentivize that type of behavior, the Trump behavior, not Trump, the more aggressive, confident behavior is incentivized in Western culture. Like it's documented if you read that book, Quiet, right? The Western world incentivizes extroverts. So if you want to, game the Western world, you go do this thing. But at the same time, like, well, there's all this literature telling you to be your authentic self. So if my authentic self is not someone who wants to be a monster or wants to be always asking and all these things, then why should I have to just to win, right? And so in those cases, if you're a good manager or you're a good leader, you don't just continuously incentivize that. You do what Bobby's doing, and you're like, I know that there are people who aren't asking, and so I'm going to go out and get that and pull it out of them. but it takes like an empathetic leader to be able to do that. But that's the part that you can play when you guys are moving up to make sure that introverts, women, whatever, are also,
That's actually really good tips because like I tend to be the quiet one, I don't really ask things. That's why I was like, I want to be the monster version of me.
You be you.
That's my direction now. But I'll still be me. But if that's where I want it to be, maybe that's the inner me, So who knows?
Yeah, I think it's
Yes.
so important to take up space as much as you can. I'm definitely a hermit. I would be happiest when I'm left to my own devices. But it's true that companies, even when they like having you, they don't have your best interests at heart. Like they're not going to give you a raise if they don't have to because of their bottom line. So it's like you do need to take up that space for yourself. And I've been so grateful anytime I've had, as Maureen was saying, had managers who are willing to vouch for me and to fight for me. And I try so hard to pay that forward, where I'm just like constantly crediting the artists I work with, making sure they get their dues and their accolades, and their payoffs when that's in place. Like anything you can do to just like center the people who deserve to be centered and bringing new voices into the conversation so they don't feel like they have to like fight to get to the top. They can become monsters if they want to, but hopefully the quiet monsters can also make their way up.
Yeah, that's a really great way of thinking.
There's good monsters. It's good monsters.
I love good monsters.
Yeah, look at
I
Monsters,
too,
Inc.
like Lynn,
Full of
I'm
good
like,
monsters.
I would love to be the monster version of myself.
That's so hard.
It kind of makes me think of like, okay, so if you picture the 80, 90-year-old version of you, right? And that person wants to give you some advice for right now. What do you
Oh my
think
God.
that future you would tell you? Would they say, be more of a monster, good monster, but be more of a monster?
No, it's probably going to be like, take care of yourself, your back, your wrist. Physical
Yeah, I think mine would
Exercise
fully be
more.
like, yeah, take care of yourself. Stop focusing so much on your career. Go on road trips and hang out with your friends.
That's
Touch
very
grass.
different. Yeah, that's very opposite way of becoming a monster, huh?
I know it's so weird where simultaneously I've always been career driven. I deeply love my career and I love making things with other people that I can put out into the world. And that's always been important to me. Like when my dad was working at DreamWorks and I would be hanging out at the studio drawing art as like a 9-year-old or something. I would always put little copyright symbols on it where I'd be like, copyright DreamWorks. I was so ready to be like a studio artist for my entire life. But then that means that I simultaneously have to take a step back and be like, oh, but also the rest of my life exists. And I'm so happy when I'm just like out in nature or seeing movies or doing anything that's not just sitting at my desk trying to hit deadlines. So it's hard. It's a struggle to find that balance, but I know it's important. I think 80-year-old me would know it's important more than current me does.
Maureen, what would future Maureen say to you?
They exercise more. I'm serious.
We're also worried about our joints.
What about Bobby? What would the 90-year-old you tell you right now?
Yeah.
I'm always trying to think of that, I'm always trying to think of that. Yeah, I'm not too sure. But I try to listen to that old version of me, whatever he says. Oh, you know what it was? So last year I thought about that, and the old version, Bobby said, worry about your mobility, stretch more. So I've been stretching a lot. I don't know.
Doing it now.
That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, it's always I think it's so important to take care of yourself, especially you're so passionate about what you're working on, right? As an artist, we all love what we do. Like if I sit in front of a computer, start drawing, I can just sit there for 3-4 hours, not moving. But it's so bad. And I went to There's one time I met an artist from I forgot which studio, but she was saying like she actually had her desk stand her workstation is a standing up desk, and she actually had a treadmill under the desk so she can walk and work at the same time. I was like, then how are you using the tablet and draw? So she actually had like a armrest on both of the table, so you can hold your elbow, so you'll be able to still draw and stably while you're walking. So you're kind of like just lower body is moving, but upper body is still working. So okay, that's very interesting way of setting things up. Just take care of your body, try to make sure you're comfortable while working. I think that's super important.
Huh.
I don't know. You're like a pigeon, like your whole body is moving, but it is stable. It's funny.
Yeah, I feel like there's some flaws in there somewhere, chiropractic issues that are going to occur.
I don't know.
when
I
you're
haven't
trying
tried, but
Yeah.
but doing stretches are good.
Yeah, I think the other thing for it, is just stop doing so much stuff. Every time I have a break, I'm looking around for what to do. And then I pick up something new. But anyways,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Learning
Like
to say
artists, we're
no
like the
is so
worst
important.
with moonlighting.
Oh, yeah.
Like every artist moonlights pretty much.
I'm finally
Wow.
got to the point where I think when I was younger, I would take freelance gigs outside of my day job because I was just like, oh, well, I could do that and I do a good job and they're paying me money for it. So I'll do it. And so I took on a lot of ones where I didn't feel like super passionate about it, even though I didn't need the additional income. And now I spent the past couple of years like saying no to a ton of freelance projects. And then like this year I'm doing some freelance for Imagineering and I'm like, yes, that's the kind of freelance I want to be doing. Like the stuff that is worth my time and is exciting and they're compensating well and really prioritizing that.
That's great.
Yeah, because it's so easy to fall into that trap of just being like, well, I have free time, as if just vegging out after work and playing some video games isn't also a valuable thing to be doing with your time. Like, no, I have to fill it all with work.
Going out to the nature,
Yeah.
take a walk.
Guys,
Or some
I have
fresh
a
air.
gaming culture question for you guys. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of these people, I'm not sure how many of the people on this participants webinar are students, but I'm curious if you can talk about the different types of cultures of game companies that you've experienced, and are there any similar things amongst all of them that you think are specific to gaming industry culture?
Claire, what's your thoughts on that? I feel like I'll think about that because my experience was like from like different countries. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I've lucked out pretty well. I've ended up working on relatively smaller teams within larger companies. So I was on a central team at Xbox where we were sort of like a SWAT team who would help with a bunch of different projects. And then HBO Interactive was also a very like cozy team of people. And so I think that helped to be a bit of a buffer for some of the harder parts of game industry culture and studio culture, where it's like, well, if I know everybody I'm working with and I'm working directly with them, it's a lot easier to just maintain a culture of respect and collaboration. And it doesn't always work out that way, but I think it's probably a lot easier than when you are, a cog in a giant machine working at Activision or Blizzard or something. Um, it's the culture is definitely there. it's it's somewhat unavoidable. But it does shift pretty dramatically at the same time from studio to studio, and it's very different being at an indie studio versus AAA, as we were saying earlier. Like
Yeah.
the types of people those studios attract are different, to put it frankly. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm thinking like because I worked for a studio that's mostly outside the US. some in the US companies, but I feel like to me, just from my own experience, that like working with like I work with Chinese company for a long time. So I every year they will fly me back to Beijing to be on site for like a month. So I had some like experience working in a studio in China, in Beijing. I would say that like I think it's getting better now, but still like game companies in China or in some of the Asia countries are very intense. We call it 996. So it's like from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, and you work 6 days a week. So it's super intense. There's no work-life balance. There's only work balance, right? That's really I feel that's so awful. I think in terms of work-life balance, definitely like company culture wise, it's better here in the States, at least like in knowing. I think still like there are times that's like crunch time, like overtime, but it's not a norm. Usually that's like, okay, there's a crunch time and there's normal time. I think that's a big difference. I remember years ago going to China, there's one studio I was interviewing, and I saw a bed in the middle of the office. They said, oh, look, we have a very comfortable setup for our employees. But it's like, why is there a bed in the studio?
Oh boy.
So it's like for whoever wants to take nap or, you stay up too late, you want to spend the night there. I was like, no, no. So that's a big culture difference for me. Probably not only just like a different company culture, but like Western and Eastern culture, I think. But I heard things are getting better now. There's a little bit more balance, but I haven't been back since 2019, so I don't know. But yeah, like Clara said, like I think company culture, it really just depends on what company, and it could be very different. So I don't have much to put in to input here.
I am glad that, as you said, that it seems to be globally getting better in terms of the assumption that crunch is going to be a part of the process. Because I think, especially in games, all industries do this, but especially games, I think has a tendency to churn people up, chew them up, and spit them out. And so people have like very short times in the industry because you just burn out so hot and so fast. Yeah. And it's so unsustainable to run a studio where you are just running through people, where they leave every couple of years and you lose all of that tacit, like like the knowledge that your team has built up over the years, the institutional knowledge. It's just not a way to run a studio. And I get so excited when I hear a studio's average length of stay is like 6 or 7 years. I'm like, oh, that's healthy. People like working there to the point that they want to stick around. And I think you make better games that way. I'd much rather make slightly worse games where the people can see their families. Working. Yeah, and they're happy. Yeah, exactly.
But like if people are happy, and maybe actually making better games.
Yeah, what a novel idea. Yeah, like taking breaks is better for your productivity. It's good.
That's the goal.
How do you see the industry changing in terms of men and women, Maureen?
Well, it's supposedly improving. So it's like all the stats say it's improving. So yeah, totally improving. I just think there's probably still a long way to go, but that doesn't mean that you have to have hope and continue. I just worry. I'm more worried about the macroeconomics of gaming industry in general, because I feel like it's from a macroeconomic perspective, or just from an industry perspective, last year was supposed to be a great year for games with all the sequel titles coming out, new hardware and whatnot, yet revenue, the money coming into the game, like what players were paying, was only like barely in line with inflation. So it's like the costs continue to rise, whereas the revenue is not going up. So as a business, I'm worried about that, and therefore more layoffs and fewer opportunities. So I'm just worried about the industry as a whole, and AAA games costs just keep on increasing over time. So, but what I do like about gaming is how you can still self-publish. It's it's not like film where there's these just only X distributors, right? You need them to say yes for you to be able to release your movie or TV show. In games, the nice thing is you can just release it on PC, or you can just distribute. Of course, you're much more advantage if you're doing it with a big publisher because it can funnel all the eyeballs into you. But it makes a leveler playing field, and that theoretically means that people who don't normally have power, so more marginalized groups, whether it's women or minorities or whatever, should have more opportunity to be able to have a crack at it. That being said, you still need money to be able to create. So, and if the people who have money, who are giving money, won't give it to women, that still makes it hard. That's still, so for me, like solving everything is about making women be the ones that have the money to distribute. It's like the very top of the food chain. It's like the investors have to be women. That being said, I'm really excited about platforms like Roblox. And Fortnite right now is much more male dominated, but hopefully with the Disney thing, more women are coming in. But for Roblox, it doesn't cost a lot of money. You can't make money unless you're the top 10 though. But a lot of the kids who are doing it because they're not in it to make money. They just want to make something. So the barriers to entry of making something like that is really low. So you don't need a lot of money, and you get instantaneously a ton of eyeballs that you can distribute to. So I feel like platforms like that, and it's like eating the entire game industry's lunch. It's like below, like they're crushing it. Roblox is crushing it. Fortnite's crushing it. Right. So there are these platforms similar to YouTube, right? When Hollywood is like, these are the gates, and they all look down on YouTube. Guess what? YouTube's gonna crush Hollywood in the future. It's what's happening. But YouTube is where it's at now, and now Hollywood's noticing. Still not cool enough, apparently, to notice enough, because right now Hollywood's fascinated with games. It's like, oh, we can't mine comic books anymore. Oh, games. We used to think we're super cool, uncool nerds. Now we're excited about you because we realize there's lots of people there. But eventually we'll probably go to YouTube. But just like YouTube kind of leveled the playing field, right? If you see a lot of the top influencers are actually like oftentimes women and minorities. So it gave a voice, and a lot of the traditional systems were like, oh, people don't want to watch that. But YouTube actually shows what people actually want. And they realize like, oh, people do want to watch women, minorities. So I do think there's hope in these newer platforms where the barriers of entry are lower, and it does feel like more of a meritocracy for women to be seen more and be able to create games. So as a long-winded answer, but yeah, that's my outlook.
Yeah, I didn't know the Roblox, that platform. I think it's so cool to see all the new platform coming out, providing all the opportunities. I think that's really cool. Sorry, Bobby, you're gonna say something.
Oh, I was gonna mention when you mentioned YouTube, I was like, yeah, there's like Meta is throwing a lot of money at games right now as well, and a bunch of these bigger players, you see some Netflix games now on streaming. Their time is valuable. So I want to just ask everybody one last question, and it's a question I love to ask because it sends out positive vibes. If there was somebody, and let's make it, if there is a woman in your life from your past or whatever that taught you something or did something for you that was really, really special, there's somebody that you could thank, who would that be and what did they do for you?
I would think, there's a couple actually. First, I think back in when I was in my first job, like my producer, she's a woman in a good project in the project. But I think the thing is like I appreciate that she's not an artist, but she has a really good eye. She made me go through all those like low moments, like it's like, okay, I don't know how to draw. This is not working. And I had to rework a couple of times. But like because she kind of holds a high standards, like, and she was pushing me to reach that standards. I think that helped me a lot to think about where I could improve, not to be just like a new grad, I know everything, but knowing what I don't know and push myself, I think that's really great. But if she wasn't there, I probably wouldn't know. And also, there's one lady from Hello Sunshine. That's when I was just had my first baby, and I was deep in the depression, and then worrying about my career and everything. She actually reached out to me for a freelance opportunity. I turned it down, but she was really nice. She was telling me, what you're going through. I totally understand, and she was wanted to let me know that the opportunity is always there, but the feeling of like being wanted and also have the hope, things will be normal again, that really helps me a lot. So yeah, I think those are really helpful for me.
Oh, it's such a big question. It's the end of my academy speech, and I'm being played off the stage. I have to think of all the women in my life to thank. I think I would definitely talk about Louise Smith, who I brought up earlier, who's my art director back at Microsoft, who really saw a ton of potential in me. I too had some fantastic women as producers. Uh, it's like all my best producers are women or non-binary. It's been great. But Sophie Mackey and Jessie Quinn were both fantastic producers who showed me like the value of a producer and made me respect production in a way that I don't think I had previously. And it turns out when you're an art director, you really need to have production on your side. And so it's so nice to have someone you can trust on that front. Um, and Jane Ng, who is my partner in crime at Campo Santo, who's like the lead 3D artist who built all of Firewatch, who is just an absolute rock star and one of my favorite people to work with. And she was also great as a point of contact when I was thinking of leaving Valve, because she had left Valve a couple months prior. It was so nice having someone I could trust to kind of talk through that transition process and what I wanted to do next in my career. So I'm eternally grateful to her. One of my favorite people. And a million others.
Lot.
Yeah.
Lot of them.
How about you,
Maureen?
Bobby? How about you?
Me? Oh my
Yeah.
God, I'd have to say my mom and my wife, not because they're my mom and my wife, but like my mom, she was the one that taught me art. She was the first person to teach me art, and she was tough on me, and that's exactly the ingredients I needed to excel. Like every image I would draw for her or draw and then show her, hoping for compliments, she would say, good effort. I could tell you put in good effort, but this is wrong, that is wrong. The perspective here is wrong. And I'm 5.
Wow.
I'm like, what is perspective? But that really built this thing in me where I don't really care that much about compliments. I do the art for myself, and genuinely, I really do, because I didn't really get many compliments as a kid. And my wife, Kay, who you guys know, she is amazing. I would not be where I am today without her, because nothing impresses her. I'm saying that as a joke, but it is kind of real. It is kind of real where it's like, oh, okay, I just did this. Oh, okay, this happened. Oh, that's good, Bobby. That's good. That's the compliment. I'm like, okay, that didn't
I heard
impress her
that you
yet.
just married your mothers.
But also, the big difference between my mom and Kay is Kay thinks that everything is very possible. right? Oh, I'm thinking of making a online school. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm thinking of making a convention. That'd be cool too, and that's the reaction, literally. Oh, okay, that's cool. What are we having for lunch? Like you could totally do that. It's a simple thing. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's
Love
the
it.
support.
Yeah. Oh, and I got to give a big shout out to my grandmother because she really helped me throughout the pandemic. She passed last year, 106 years old.
Oh my God.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So
amazing.
she's been through some stuff, a lot of stuff, right? Born in World War One,
Wow.
went through World War II in her 20s. Communism took over when she took a trip to Taiwan, and that was the last time she got to talk with her family because
Oh
there's
my
no
God.
communication for 50 years,
Thanks.
right? And she said when the pandemic was happening, she said, don't worry about it. We've been through worse. It's just people forgot, right? Because she was born in a pandemic. She was
Wow.
born during the Spanish flu, where millions, tens of millions of people were dying, right? So big shout out to grandma. But what about you, Maureen? Why don't we end it off with you?
Lori Loeb, it was during college. She told me, hope this is relevant to all the students out there. She said, you don't need to know what you're doing in your life. You don't have to choose your perfect major or know that you want to be an artist or this type of artist or whatever. All that matters is you, whatever it is that you do, you have great work ethic. You work on it really hard because then the people around you, first, you'll learn something from it. And two, the people around you see that you are treating their work with respect and working so hard that they will admire you. And later on, when it comes time to do your next thing or whatever your dream is, they will come help you and recommend you because they just they respect you. And I have found that that is true. Like I didn't know. I started off as a UI. I want to be an artist. My mom said no. I'd be poor and destitute too because she's Asian, and she just like I started as a UI designer, then cultural anthropologist, then product manager, then went to business school when I wanted to go get to art school instead, but she told me maybe go to business school, and then did Pixar in between. That was games, and then now started a company. And so all those different jobs taught me something. I know UI, I know how to research, PM, I know all those things. So it all was helpful, but the most valuable thing is all those people from all those different jobs. When I want to start my company, they said to me, you've been wanting to do animation since I've met you, since like college. And I'm going to come help you make this happen because I want to help make your dreams come true because you work so hard in whatever job it was. So people generally want to help you make your dreams come true as long as you're not a dick, you're talented, and you treated them with respect. So that's just saying, don't stress out so much. Do choosing the right path and doing the right thing exactly now. There's like many different paths there, and as long as you work hard, you'll get there. So chill out.
Right on.
That's great.
Great advice. Well, and I work hard, and I just announced that I'm making a game on social media like 3 hours ago. So please give me a follow on the new channel, An Infinite Story. There's my shameless plug. Okay, so I want to thank my wonderful audience that came and with the questions and everything and kept us company. And of course, the biggest thank you goes to my wonderful panelists, friends. Thank you dearly for your wonderful insight, your stories, everything. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you at Lightbox this year.